Hello, it's Justin. This is Talk Junkie. It's a rough time right now for a lot of people, and I went really, I did a podcast. I don't remember if it was which was last, odds and ends or the importance of breathing. I don't remember, but I've touched on the subject to some degree twice now, and we've had great conversations outside of the podcast. People that probably don't listen to the podcast, but with you guys, with the emails back and forth, and I don't. Where do you like I said, I'm a white guy from Eastern Kentucky. At what point do you decide what to say? So much of it is I can't I can't speak intelligently on. I can't I don't know. And so I thought that's what I've got to say, and let it be at that. And like I said, we spoke to a lot of your email and stuff. Someone from the show must have turned. Well, they did. They turned somebody else on to the show, and that's the first episode they listened to was the importance of breathing. And then he said he went back and listened to one or two more. Yesterday he contacted me via email, and I emailed back, and we emailed about 4 or 5 times back and forth yesterday. So first of all, shout out to Malik from Paris, Kentucky, and to our mutual friend. Again, I don't share people's names unless they tell me to share their names. But the conversation that Malik and I had is just what Malik and I had. That doesn't have any impact on what I'm... It was a good conversation. It was a good thing. And I expressed some feelings to him, and he expressed some feelings to me, and we talked about some things. And Malik is originally from Louisiana, and he lived in Atlanta for quite some time, and I got to hear a lot about Malik's story. And I know I don't do guests on here hardly ever. The only way I can do a guest is be face to face with them, doing it the way I'm currently doing it. I've got a friend named Brian. I'm wanting to get on the podcast to talk about one topic in particular. I think Malik would be a good guest, and he's very informed, and he sent me a YouTube video or clip yesterday of a YouTube page he's building. He's very articulate and just an enjoyable person to listen to talk. I enjoyed the video. I think his YouTube page will do good when it's up and ready. I like the way he's doing it and presenting it. It's kind of like a news setup. I like everything about it. So, I think Malik would be a good guest down the road when I either switch platforms or providers, or get a handle on the Skype deal and a place to do this outside of when I'm on the run for work, or like this morning going for a walk, super early. Trying to get that to where I could schedule in stuff. Other than that, I'm going to have to go meet people face to face, which is not, I'm not against. So in the future, I'd kind of like to see that happen. But Malik and I, we talked about personal responsibility and expressing beliefs and things of that nature, and or as I like to refer to it, expressing things that I'm easily willing to change because beliefs are scary. We went through a lot of things, and I felt that I needed to tell Malik how I felt about certain things in particular, so as not to be facetious in any way to him. At least beliefs that were germane to what we were talking about at the time. And, I told him that I truly believe that a complete and total excuse me, I didn't get the cough button in time. That a complete and total refusal of all lives matter and a complete and total focus on Black Lives Matter, only Black Lives Matter, that I felt was not beneficial to any movement. That it didn't, if that, because we were talking about a list of things that make people racist if you say these things. And I've heard the house fire analogy. And that's cool. Like, that's true. The house fire analogy is true if we want to continue viewing each other as African Americans, as Caucasians, as Asians, as Latinos, so on and so forth. Now, Malik felt that, or Mal, as he likes to be called, felt that differently than me. And my argument was, well, his argument was, the other lives aren't under attack right now. And in the specific areas he's talking about, that's very true. And I concede to that. That's very true. But I did have this to say. And if we want to continue to live as those divided entities, as African American lives, or Black lives, as white lives, as Latin lives, if we want to continue to live in that divided manner, then that's not detrimental to that. If that's the way we want to live, then saying Black Lives Matters is not detrimental to that. But I feel that the goal should be for all lives to be equal. And if all lives are to be equal, they have to be addressed on an equal basis. But that means you have to work twice as hard to make equal those, who are not equal right now. But in that case, human lives matter. And Mal felt that was something that he still feels that Black Lives Matter is an important statement right now. But that he would like to see it disappear and see it gone, because it would be nice to get to human lives matter. But he's right. We have a certain responsibility right now in those particular areas of our country where that's an issue right now, to be taking care of Black Lives Matter. And there's a certain responsibility we have in certain areas to take care of Jewish Lives Matter, and immigrant lives matter. There's refugee lives matter. There's various places over the world where we need to attend to various different things. And once we grow enough as a people, then human lives can matter. And I say I agree with that. I will never agree that it's not okay to say all lives matter, because that is okay. I'll never. It's okay to say. It's okay to say that, and I can't not agree with that. But I think it's okay to say Black Lives Matter, and I thank Mal for that. But it made me think about today, and if I was going to touch anything even involving this topic again, and we went on, and the list of things that made me racist, that being one of them, that all lives matter, was so ludicrous to me that I thought it was a joke, and in talking to three or four other individuals, one of them being Mal, and realizing that not only do a lot of people take this serious and believe this, but that I don't know. I was blown away. Mal, of the four, and I'm not going to name names on any other one except for Todd, because Todd did say that I could mention his name in this. But Mal, on me thinking that all lives matter is not racist, Mal agreed. Two of the other four were Caucasian, and they did not agree. Well, three of the four were Caucasian, but two of those did not agree. I don't know. So it led me to looking at some of the other things on the list. When I say that I felt like people were weaponizing Dr. King's speech, I found a lot of African Americans who feel the same way, the same exact way. They've made some better points than I've made, some more articulate points than I've made, but a good percentage of them has brought up the same speech. I mean, the same interview in the same words that I brought up. But it was brought to my attention because I no longer deal with Facebook. But it was brought to my attention that on Facebook there's a list going around about racist things. And if you have me on Instagram, author_J Perkins, the meme I posted with Dr. King's face and it explaining when he said that rioting was self-defeating, and I actually created that. I'm the one that created that meme. So I don't know if that meme is getting around or if someone else has brought it up, but to say that right after saying riots are the language of the unheard, Dr. King said that he felt riots were self-defeating and so on. To say that is racist. None of the four, because it's easier, this is doing a panel. None of the four felt that was racist, but I do feel that way. And not surprising to me, all four felt that way. Now, this is not a very diverse panel, to my knowledge, because there's two people I don't know about, but I'm almost 100% positive. To my knowledge, these people all live in Kentucky, and I do know that three of the four are Caucasian. So I understand the lack of diversity. I'm not putting this out there to be some grand research project. It's about how I feel. But the narrative that's racist and that African Americans don't feel that way, I don't feel is accurate, because I see that, especially if not in that particular of a sense of regarding what Dr. King said, but if nothing else, in just regarding rioting and destruction as a whole. There is tons of video footage, of course not on the news, and of course not mainstream on most social media, but it's fairly easy to find of African Americans denouncing and trying to fight back against these situations and against the violent protests that are destroying communities. Now, something I feared would become an issue and may still, I've seen it in Chicago, are citizens. This large group of citizens I've seen, most definitely a minority. They were not Caucasians. A lot of them Latino. Arming themselves to defend businesses that their families fought and struggled to get out of Mexico and get out of a bad situation and get here and make a life for themselves, and have built, and some of them Cuban, and built these businesses, and they're willing to fight and die for those businesses against rioters. And that puts a divide that need not be there. It creates a situation where we are fighting each other instead of us standing up and fighting against tyranny of a government. And that was one of the other things that made me apparently racist, is I don't believe there's any benefits to the rights. None whatsoever. It's only detrimental. It only does bad. No good at all comes from it. Protests are a completely different thing. And I think Lexington, Kentucky is, and this is something Mal and myself talked about quite extensively. I think they should be one of the places that are considered a blueprint for how protest and interaction between cops and protesters should happen. And I much like him, I'm very proud of what happened there. Now, Todd has a family member that lives in Lexington and is associated to be respectful of what he would like for me to say, is associated with law enforcement to some degree. I don't know what that means. I don't know if it means an officer or what, but said that, they were very tense and worried about what was to come, especially after seeing things from Louisville, but was very pleased with what had happened. But to say that the protests aren't beneficial or not the protests, the riots are not beneficial, is considered to be racist. You're not destroying the system. You're not destroying you're not destroying the bad cops. You're not fighting Trump. You're destroying communities. You're destroying privately owned businesses. You're destroying people's abilities to defend themselves. And I've heard from some massive anarchists that want the whole system to fall financially. When that happens, we all starve, probably. But either way, that's not what you're doing. You're not... Those large companies, a few large companies like the big upscale companies in New York that were hit and looted, insurance is paying for that. Insurance is paying for Target. They will probably profit. They will profit from that destruction. You did not hurt them. Advanced Auto will profit from that destruction. The employees of Advanced Auto will not profit from that destruction. They will have to. They will, I assume, get unemployment. But until they do, there will be gaps, and there will be things hard for them to replace. But many of these privately owned businesses, they'll have just enough insurance to maybe cover investment, to maybe not even cover investment, to help them make it a little bit longer. So if it's a particularly poor community, or if it's a community that's very dependent upon social programs and very dependent on community housing, those neighborhoods will be hit very hard, and those neighborhoods will suffer. You see, they won't just bounce back from that, because big business isn't coming in to save them. The government, the version of systemic racism that you're protesting against isn't designed to come back in and rebuild black neighborhoods. It's not designed to come back in and rebuild minority neighborhoods. It's not designed to come back in and rebuild family-owned stores. It's designed to prop up Walmart. It's designed to prop up Target. It's designed to help the rich. And if you want to fight it, destroying the poor is not the way to fight it. You can plead ignorance only to a certain level in regards to things like that. You know, how many clothes you can stuff in the trunk of your car, like we've seen in a couple of videos, it's not justice for Mr. Floyd. It's disrespect to his name. And I understand that because I'm white, it makes me racist to say that, and I don't have a right to have an opinion on that. And silencing people who support a movement just because of their color, or just because they don't support the negatives of that movement, does nothing but kill that movement. And so It's just another thing on a list of ridiculous things that apparently makes me a racist. And I know myself, and I know my actions, and I know my past, and I know what I am. So I don't feel the need to defend that or to say that I'm something that I'm not. I know who and what I am. And I defend that when need be, and I don't need to defend it because I have those beliefs, because there's nothing wrong with those beliefs. They come from a good place, but they come from a rational place, and they come from a place of true concern. That's not how you initiate change. It's just not. I see vote being touted as the way to change, and I do believe that's possible. It depends very much on who you're voting for and those things. You know, if you're voting for Mitch McConnell, you're not going to get change. You're not going to get a lot of change from Grimes. I mean, same monster, different clothing, but at least she's not been in there, as far as I know, my entire lifetime. I don't know. You know, Biden's just an undefendable human being, and so is Trump. So, I think that voting is the secret, but I think the secret is getting new people to vote for. It's funny to me how we're always given the same choice, but we feel like we're making a choice. I will be voting, and I do recommend that you vote. I think it's one of the few rights that we still enjoy, even though it's contaminated and tainted. I will be writing in almost every race, not every race, but almost every race, including the presidential. I will be writing in. I'm not taking what I'm given. See, I look at how unified people are right now. And if people unified together and elected a non-party associated or a new party associated person, you concede a little bit on issues. They may have one issue that you're not on board with, but one that do. You concede a little bit on that, and everybody collectively gets together. They don't even have to beat the incumbent. They don't even have to beat the other party. They just have to make a big enough splash that politics gets scared, that politicians get scared, that the two-party system that's really just one party gets scared. And then you continue that momentum. If you took the organizing power of the things that are going on right now and put them together and did that, it's unreal at where you'd be able to be in regards to helping to start a revolution in a new party and new blood into the system. But you have to be willing to do those things that people think are crazy, those things that people think are a waste of time or whatever they may be. But I will be voting, and I will be writing in, and I believe that's the only way that I can make a difference voting. I don't believe that voting for a Democrat over a Republican or a Republican over a Democrat makes a change. I believe it just puts a blue or a red tint onto the same issues. Barack Obama was president for 8 years. When you get down to brass tacks, when you get down to numbers, no change. George W. Bush, president for 8 years. When you get down to numbers, you get down to the root of things, no change. The few change that come in those administrations were for the worse. I mean change for the good. Cheney pulled the strings on Bush and took us to war. President Obama made no attempt to get us out of those wars, and at that time killed more innocent people with drones than any president before. There's no there's no change. And those riots look a lot like some of these other countries. You know, they're taking out the businesses and in some cases the public transportation. If they just went for the schools and the churches next, it could be a real war zone. You know, cripple them where they're the weakest. I don't know. I look at this list of things that made me racist, and I was concerned and frustrated at first, and then I realized that list had to be made by racists. Because almost everything on that list, not everything, but almost everything on that list that I took issue with, well, everything that I took issue with. I've seen different variances of the list. One list says people who say, I'm tired of hearing about racism are racist. Probably, yeah. I mean, like, there's some of the list had some no-nonsense things on it that, yeah, most definitely were. But for the list that I read, and I don't have it with me to give you everything that's on it, it was mostly things that promoted peace and promoted compassion and promoted hope and promoted moving forward. But moving forward unified. If unified, it's a harder situation to control for these large groups who want to control it. One of the last things that was on one of the lists I looked at, apparently, and I didn't know this, I'm assuming it's the gentleman in Texas, was beat to death. He did end up dying. Was beat to death by the protesters. I feel that those people are as guilty and as in need of being prosecuted as the police who killed Mr. Floyd. 100%. They're murderers, just like that cop who murdered an innocent person, just like that cop who took a life out of racism, just like that cop. And that, if that makes me racist, I make no apologies for that. I don't know if the gentleman was white, Asian, African American. I don't know. It didn't give those details in the story or in the list. But that's a hopeless feeling that that's considered okay, and it's not considered okay by the people that are out there to truly protest. Those people are speaking up. I share every video I find of it. Those people are speaking up. They called a white Antifa member destroying property in a city and picked him up, took the hammer from him, and gave him to the cops. Because that's not what they're there to do. They don't condone the beating of a lady in a wheelchair. Now, again, this is from the list, and I'd heard this. I know a lady was beaten, and my count on the video was 4 or 5 men, I think they said. I heard this from a fairly reputable news source, which means I take it with a grain of salt, because I don't believe anything the news says for the most part, especially not anymore. But 5 men attacked one lady in a wheelchair. Those are cowards. Those are. I'm fine with. That's something that myself and a lot of more liberal-minded people disagree on. Is when it's provable without a shadow of a doubt, video evidence, whatever the case may be. I'm all for the death penalty, and I'm for the death penalty for that cop, and I'm for the death penalty for those people who beat that one man to death for no reason, and I'm all for the death penalty for 5 men who would beat on one woman in a wheelchair. That's astounding. I don't know. But I made a new friend through all this. And I've had great conversations through all this. And as sad as the situation is, and as hard as the situation is to digest and fully see now, I still try. And I'll tell you why, even though it may not be mentioned again, or it may, I don't know, on this podcast. But even if it's never mentioned again on this podcast, I try to understand the situation now. I try to get a grasp on the situation now and to understand the situation now. And the reason that I try to do that is because history will taint it. History is written by those who are in control of the present. Those who control the present control the past, and those who control the past control the future. That's Rage Against the Machine. And if we don't look at it in the moment, and we don't set the narrative straight ourselves, and we don't write it ourselves, then our children and their children, and maybe even us 40 years from now, won't know exactly what happened, won't remember exactly what happened. There will be question, and the question will be because the narrative was altered. Now, hopefully, we keep growing for the positive, because we are growing for the positive. If you look at from slavery in the United States, the apartheid in South Africa, to the Jewish Holocaust, to the mistreatment of Asians in the early United States and in construction work. You look at all these different things, the genocides in Africa. You look at all these different things, and we're growing past that. We're growing past that. The two things that are fighting us the hardest are religion, race, and sexuality. Religion, especially in these Muslim states, or Muslim countries, or religion is massively oppressive against other religion and against sexuality. And even in the United States, it may not be violently oppressive, but it is sometimes hiddenly oppressive, from Christianity to Judaism to the Islamic faith, against other beliefs, but against sexuality and against people's identities of who they feel they are and who they actually are. And religion is, in my opinion, I know it's not a popular thought, but religion, not faith, religion is a dangerous, dangerous thing. I'm not for the oppression of anything, so I'm not for the oppression of religion, but it needs to be looked at and examined and viewed through the lens available. And racism is getting better. I don't see anyone denying that. The numbers and the statistics and those things all suggest it to be so, but the people who are experiencing it daily, those numbers don't mean anything to them. Those statistics don't mean anything to them, because they're having to live through it. They're having to experience it on a daily basis. And so until you can address those issues, then it's still very prevalent, and it's still very much a situation that we have to do something about. And it's hard. It's hard to look at something that feels so large and say, well, we got to change it. But it's been done in the past. I mean, this was a slave-owning country at one point in time. Understand? It's nothing is beyond the scope of possibility for human beings, including race relations, especially if it gets down to race relations. One race, human race. We get down to that point, and I think we can do it, and I think we will do it. something that was on that list. African Americans can't be racist. That's an absurd statement. And that's all it deserves, is that statement from me. I will give it no more. That's one of the few ones that I really asked everyone that I was corresponding with email-wise and was around me personally about. And that was pretty well a universal agreement that was absurd. So I don't know. I don't. Things like some of the news stories that are coming out, and some of the things that are happening, and some of the narrative that's being spread that isn't true, and various different things are setbacks. They are. But people are getting tired of CNN, and people are getting tired of Fox, and people are getting tired of presidential addresses, and people are getting tired of social media, and people are starting to say, wait, this is not what actually happened. This is not what's real. This is what we're being told, and we're being told this so that we are perpetually at war with each other, because if we're perpetually at war with each other, we cannot win a war against oppression. We can't win a war against racism. We can't win a war against a government that's ran much more like a for-profit business than a non-profit outreach. I don't know. That's how I feel. The next show you'll hear will be the retrospective show, our 100th episode. And it'll be a little more cheery and a little more happy. But not everything can be cheery and happy. Not everything can be fun and exciting. I wish it could be, because that would be my preference. But it can't be. And I almost didn't do anything. And then I did one podcast. And I almost didn't do this podcast. And then so many of you messaged me and we talked. And I don't know. Silence can be violence. Sort of like a slit wrist. It's Rage Against the Machine. I don't know. Felt like I needed to say it, and I'm happy that I did. And I think good conversation is the only way to really address things. And I truly appreciate the good conversation, and I truly appreciate you, Malik, and for you reaching out to someone you didn't know and taking the time to listen to the show and listen to the next episode, the 100th episode. And I'll give you a rewind on what we've done before that. But I'm very, very, very thankful for everybody that listens, but even more so for everybody that reaches out and contacts me and makes this fun and makes this a thought experiment on so many occasions, and then sometimes just makes it fun. But thank you very much. The email is talkjunkie@gmail.com if you want to join in on the conversation. I will keep anything you say private if you say to keep it private. I won't use your name if you say not to use your name. There's a lot of things that are said that have been kept private. I've not betrayed that with anyone else. Just tell me in the message that that's what you want. The book is available now for pre-order through the Red, READ, the Red Spotted Newt in Hazard, Kentucky. Find them on Facebook, the Red Spotted Newt. Only place you can get it. You pre-order from now until, my advice, June 18th. And if your pre-order's in by June 18th, then we should have books in store by July 1st. We will have books in store by July 1st. From July 1st to August 1st, it's only available at the Red Spotted Newt, and it is only available for pre-order at the Red Spotted Newt. I know so many of you have contacted, well, not so many, let's dial that back. That's being fake news. A few of you have contacted me and said, well, I live here. My friend Mandy is the owner and proprietor of the Red Spotted Newt, and a very intelligent lady, and understands the mail system extremely well. My understanding is she will mail books to you. and the Postal Service in this wild and wonderful world we live in has grown exponentially and has the ability to ship anywhere. So don't worry about the fact that the store's in Eastern Kentucky. Anywhere you buy the book from, you won't be buying it from where you're at. You'll be buying it from somewhere else, and they'll ship it to you. That's how books work. I don't know. I mean, that's how shipping works. But please pre-order it if you're interested. And please get it while it's only available at the Red Spotted Newt. If I never sell another copy after the Red Spotted Newt, I'll be fine. I've not had the best of luck with local releases and local sales. I want to make that change this time. So, get out there, get involved, get it. And it's called Creating the Perfect Slaves. It's by Justin Perkins, myself. And then again, it is available only at the Red, READ, the Red Spotted Newt. I love that name. Hashtag the Newt. Contact them today and pre-order. Reserve your copy today. Don't die, don't suck. Be good to each other.